All right, everybody, this is mold mycotoxins, fungus, Candida, and it's the root of all roots. And so what I'm going to be talking about today, answering one very crucial question, which is mold or fungus implicated in any of my health concerns or issues? That you're going to have answers at the end of today. I'm going to make sure that I leave 20 minutes for Q&A, anything related to Q&A. We even have a guest on here that may be pulling up their own MycoTox lab to chat about results. So that's the goal for today. And thank you both, Terry and Regan, for being here. I appreciate you. And so, wrong one. Here we go. So these are my sources. I could talk bacteria and fungus all day long. I have a stack of books that I reference, so feel free to go in there. I have articles with references, so if you really like this topic too, there's some amazing people that do this work with patients, and I'm just a learner as well. So the best predictor of disease states is the amount of toxins in someone's body. This is Dr. Pizzorno. He's a naturopathic doctor. And I would just like to add, or in our homes or in our environment. So this is Dr. Greger. And Dr. Greger asked at the end of last year in December 2025, is mold an issue? Is alpha toxins and mold an issue? So I'm going to read just real briefly what he puts in his article. In recent years, mold has been blamed for all sorts of vague and subjective symptoms, but we have little scientific evidence that mold should be implicated. However, this concept of toxic mold syndrome has permeated the public consciousness, perpetrated by disreputable, predatory practices of those making money testing homes for mold spores or testing people's urine or blood. But all these tests are said to further propagate misinformation and inflict unnecessary and often exorbitant costs on patients desperate for a clinical diagnosis, right or wrong, for the constellation of maladies. This continued belief is a myth in those perpetrated by those charlatans who believe that measles vaccines cause autism, that homeopathy works, and that fluoride in water should be removed. So he then goes on to explain that environmental mold is not an issue, but food, alpha toxins, mold in food, the one you're seeing here, corn, is a human carcinogen and should be taken very seriously, and that the FDA monitors our food, and so essentially we are good. So he also discredits SIBO, which is a condition that I have had. And I've seen this gentleman speak at the Health and Wellbeing Conference in San Diego in 2024, and he is a medical doctor and on the board of Lifestyle Medicine. And I'll just say this, that I'm going to be totally transparent in when it comes to in my functional testing and functional world and foundational training in today's, because the reality is the science, it's a little messy. So, oh, that picture's not coming up, but if you just do a quick AI or Google search, you will see that alpha toxin, what Dr. Greger talks about, which is a mold fungus that grows on food, particularly in corn, causes liver cancer by acting as a potent DNA damaging agent. And so the other piece is that I'll share from the wonderful gentleman, the owner of Got Mold, Jason Earl, this 1999 landmark study. So this is the year I graduated from high school, many, many years ago. And it was that chronic sinusitis is not bacterial, that 93% of sufferers with chronic sinusitis is fungal. And the tricky part of this is that it's actually immune disorder. So when they tested healthy subjects without sinus issues, they found almost as much fungal growth in their nasal passages too, because what we're going to talk about, fungal growth, fungus and mold is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Everyone breathes them in. But the crucial difference is that it wasn't the presence of mold, but it was how the patient's bodies reacted to it. So we each have very unique biology, and we each have a unique immune system. I'll be talking about genes today, and we each have our own toxic accumulation and or burden. So not one person has the science. And so what I'm inviting you today to do today, if you're watching a recording or on YouTube, is to stay curious. And that is all I'm going to share about that. So what are we going to get into today? It's the agenda. I'm going to go through some quick facts. I'm going to go into the genes. And then how I thought about this is like, I try to get into your guys' brains and was like, what do what do they need to know? Well, I thought about firstly, fungus inside of us, that it actually gets colonized and overgrows, either topically from skin issues or inside of our gut. And then I'm going to end with the environmental toxic mold, the environmental home piece at the end, and I have case studies throughout. And like I mentioned, I'll make sure that there's at least 20 minutes for Q&A. So you two know this story. This was me in 2023, getting married, and then going on a Hawaiian vacation early January 2024. And I am looking, this is in Kona in the south part of the Big Island, and I can't hear anything. This was 5 days of misery. Couldn't go out on any excursions, no catamarans, no nothing. And I had to go to urgent care before I flew back to the States because my ears were completely clogged. Nothing natural worked. So I had to go see a doctor. And he took, a big piece of wax out of my ear and prescribed me a script for amoxicillin because it was a bacterial ear infection. So I get my script of amoxicillin and I take it for a day or two and then get back on a plane to fly back to California. And my ears didn't burst. Thank God. That was my whole goal. It's like I didn't want any bursting of eardrums on a plane. So then I get back to the States, and what you see here is a video of me with SIFO, Small Intestinal Fungal Overgrowth. I'm pulling fungus off the top of my scalp. This was going on for about 4 to 5 months. And it's short. Let's see if I pause it. Anyway, yeah, this was me pulling my scalp for months. And so I went back to the States and I saw a PA, physician assistant, at another urgent care because the amoxicillin was not working. And I had asked him, is it possible that what's going on in my ears is what is going on and it's correlated with what's going on with my scalp? And he said, absolutely not. So he gave me a prescription for corticosteroids, an immune suppressant. And what I found out was that Malaysia fungus, which is a single cell yeast, can travel from the gut and systemically out and across the blood-brain barrier. So what I had was a fungal overgrowth of Malaysia fungus and I was taking amoxicillin, which is made from penicillium, which is made from mold. So I was eating concentrated amounts of mold and having the steroids, making my mold have steroidal strength. And this is why fungus, molds, candida, environmental molds is really confusing because no one has it down pat. This is an emerging field. And so if you try and DIY this is why you can get overwhelmed very quickly. So I am a holistic health practitioner, national board certified health and wellness coach, and a functional nutritional counselor. And I help natural health seekers find and fix the root cause of any of their gut-brain autoimmune issues without medications or overwhelm. And so I'm going to be sharing more case studies. And so I want to get into the quick facts. So this is a novel picture. This was from 2023 from National Geographic. And you see those bowling balls in there, those cones. That's actually the fungi. That's Candida. So sitting amongst a bed of all this bacteria, and that's the yellow pieces. So the gut is comprised of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea. And the fungi are it's so small. It's less than 0.1% of our microbiota is made up of fungi. But when it overgrows, we've got problems. So just like you'll find with beneficial or commensal bacteria, good bacteria. Saccharomyces boulardii is a favorable yeast. And so the same thing with parasites. They can be supportive and helpful, but when they, and even heavy metals, but when they overgrow or there's too much of them, then it becomes a problem. So real quick, as we get into the training today, it's like, I had to do a fair amount of research on this because it's like, we don't really know. So fungi is the whole kingdom. Mushroom, it's its own species. There's 100,000 different species of mold, type of fungus, and fungi's job is just to break down organisms and turn things into dirt. With like all those trees, they communicate underneath the ground. And it's like fungi are able to help them. 30% of our planet is fungal. The fungal kingdom. So there's fungi, there's molds, and it's ubiquitous. They are everywhere, but there's only a couple hundred that affect human beings, us, in ways that can threaten our health and or damage our properties, like our homes. So certain molds produce a chemical toxin. It's like byproduct, and those are called mycotoxins. So it's a chemical that molds release, that toxic molds release. And they're so tiny, they're smaller than half of a human hair, and they're primarily brought in inhaled through our nasal passages. So we test for, in functional medicine and or functional nutrition, between 14 to 36 different types of mycotoxins, the toxic ones that affect us, like Aspergillus, Stachybotrys, Penicillium, and more. So the thing is, then there are yeasts, okay? These are single cell molds, and that was an issue in my story, that fungal overgrowth. Malaysia is a yeast. So yeasts are totally part of our microbiome. They live among us. We happily. But again, if they overgrow like Candida albicans, then this is where we can struggle. Our ecosystem loses balance. So that's why I work in, this concept around allostatic load, because molds can be considered an environmental toxin. It's like in our homes, in our environment, in our gyms, and our workplaces, and can be considered a chronic infection, which would be the fungal yeast issues that are inside of us. So too much too quickly, we could have, go on a tropical vacation and have an exposure. When I was in Hilo, Hawaii, it was rainy. I was staying in a hotel. I had already gotten sick and then had got, this was contributed to this ear infection, right? This fungal infection. So too much too quickly or too little too long, where we never address this fungal imbalance, and that can tip us over our critical line of overwhelm. And this is Dr. Amy Apigian's work. And real quick, this is why I work in this environmental, space, is because the cells have a cell danger response, and they can't get into cell safety when we're constantly being bombarded with new stressors, like toxins, like infections, like metals, like pollution. So another way to look at this is Dr. Mark Hyman. This was from the Longevity Summit. 90% of chronic disease is driven by the environment outside of us, and the environment that's going on inside of us, and not our genome, which is our genetics. So Regan, you've already know this slide very well, but this is where I always ask people, I'm like, okay, Regan and Terry, have you ever eaten peanuts, had a piece of grain, a dried fruit, ever taken a round of antibiotics, ever had a glass of alcohol, or enjoyed a cup of coffee, or went on a tropical vacation? Go ahead and put in the chat if you've done any of these things. I sure hope you have, because that means you're human and that you're living, for God's sakes, once or twice. I know. My traveler, Regan, my traveler. So this is, you might be giggling, but we've all been exposed to mold. So mold in a word is everywhere, but it's not all bad. So we come in contact with mold every single day of our lives. And we, love and willfully ingest a lot of these things, except for maybe antibiotics. So there's no way to get around it. But is your immune system reacting to the mold, or do you have too much going on? So here's the thing. I have a quiz I'm going to share with you in the chat. I don't know if either of you took that quiz. I'm going to put it in here. Here it is. And if you're watching online, I will make sure that that link is in the description box. So in general, you're asking the question, could mold be contributing to my symptoms? So if you have the chronic fatigue, headaches, sinus issues, the coughing, wheezing that's chronic, maybe even allergies, that sore throat, strep throat, watery, itchy eyes. I think about like a current client right now, but it's constant. Skin rashes or hives, which I'm going to talk about skin today. Being frequently ill, any sensitivity to odors and difficulty concentrating, this brain fog issue. Maybe let's look into mold. Let's talk about it today. The other piece, which is where, some researchers like Dr. Greger, they're not understanding, or I need to let someone in, that they're the great masquerader. It's this chronic exposure to mold. They're little chemicals called mycotoxins, candidas, or fungus. The little asterisks, the ones that are starred, they have a correlation with mold. So ulcerative colitis, if you've got ulcerative colitis, you might want to look into mold and or fungus. If you've got autoimmunity, this whole idea of molecular mimicry, it can mimic this multiple sclerosis, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. People that have Lyme disease, Lyme and mold go hand in hand because the mold brings down the immune system, tires it out. And so then these underlying things that may have not been expressed now, these chronic infections can be expressed. Cognitive decline, chronic sinusitis, which I talked about, chronic fatigue syndrome, and I think those are the biggies. But all of these could have issues with mold. So the quiz is in the chat. Diane, thank you for joining us. I'll make sure that in the recording, I'll link the mold quiz so you have a copy of that. And so those were the quick facts and the quiz today. And so I do want to get into the genetics piece, and then I'll get into Candida, yeast, everything internal inside of us, and then I'll get into the environmental mold, and then I'll take questions. So the genetics, this is what blew my mind, okay? This one fact alone, 25% of the human population has HLA genes that don't make antibodies to mold and its toxic chemicals called mycotoxins. So I give the analogy in my emails that it's like Harry Potter with his invisibility cloak. He's running through the castle and nobody can see him. Nobody knows he's there. So that's why one person can go down in a family and 3 people are fine, or 3 people are not fine in a family and one person, is fine. So that's the issue with mold, is that we are so bio-individual and our immune systems are what's the problem. In this case, our immune systems are not recognizing it and excreting it properly. So that's why I test genetics with my clients. I make sure, I'm like, what are we working with here? Because in my particular case, I have homozygous SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, on these HLA genes, and the CYP1A2, I also have a red marker for, and that do not do well with phase 1 elimination of alpha toxins. So phase 1 liver detoxification. I also have MTHFR SNPs, and so that's also implicated in detox, and I also have immune issues in general. So the idea here is that we want to look at, are you able to find and eliminate mold? And if not, you might need some tools and some help to not just remove it from your environment, and there's some tools that we can use for that, but also look at testing and understanding mold in overgrowth in the body. Because the reality, and Terry, you've seen this a million times, we are not dealing with grandma's same world. We are in a different world. Up to 80,000 toxins are bombarded that we're dealing with. Our bodies have to deal with today that we did not have to deal with 170 years ago. Our, gut is comprised, in our detoxification, we were designed to eliminate the bacteria and or viruses or fungi. But when we have all this other onslaughts, we don't function as well. So those are the quick facts, genetics. And so I'm going to get into this Candida yeast and some case studies around the internal topical piece. And let me get back in. Okay, so there are food-derived molds. And so our immune system, we can test for IgA and or IgG response, which is a delayed sensitivity to molds. And so while foodborne molds rarely colonize, eating highly contaminated foods means that you're directly absorbing these preformed mycotoxins, which then need to be detoxified by the liver and or the kidneys. So for instance, give you guys an idea, this is from Dr. Greger's his article that I cited earlier. Ochratoxin A, which I've had a couple clients with particularly elevated, actually now 4, with elevated levels of ochratoxin A, OTA. And so they say it's predominantly a food, it's mold is in the food. The mycotoxins, which are the chemical messengers, are in the food. However, I also read that it can be environmental as well. So the big ones to look at is oats, cereal oats, wine, pork, and coffee. So there is a global contamination of food crops with mycotoxins. And if you could just imagine silos in the Midwest, big containers coming across seas without any air conditioning, right? This is how the molds and the fungi. So they're saying that up to 25% of the world's crops are affected. And this is by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. But it turns out that it could be up to 60 to 80%. And this is Dr. Greger. And ochratoxin A is amongst the 5 most critical mycotoxins that are subject to legal regulations, just like alpha toxins that I talked about earlier in our corn. So if you have the biggest thing you can do for helping your toxic load and or burden is consider, a antifungal diet. Doug Kaufman, which I'm showing a picture of one of his books. It's The Fungus Linked to Women's Health Problems. He's been doing this research for 40 years. He trains physicians on fungus and molds, and he has his own diet. But the main thing to think about is that fungus, they love carbohydrates and sugar. This is what they feed on. So corn, we make corn syrup out of corn. So think about eliminating corn. It's very hard for us people that are gluten-free, but consider doing your best to think about sourcing with corn. Wheat, when we think about storage issues, think about containers, think about our breads, think about our silos. And then coffee. I have some recommendations for low mold or mold-free coffee. Life Boost is something that you can find on my website. But yeah, milk, this is Dr. Andrew Campbell. 91% of pasteurized milk has up to an average between 1 to 4 mycotoxins. So we just need to, again, if we can consider it just for 45 days, Doug Kaufman's saying just to try to do an antifungal diet, and he has everything you would need on his website. And his website is called Know the Cause. He has the signs of, do you have a fungal overgrowth, right? So do you have digestive problems? gas, bloating, diarrhea, GERD? Do you have skin or nail problems like rashes or eczema or toenail fungus? Do you have fatigue, feel worn out all the time, brain fog? Have you repeatedly tried to lose weight and failed? His diet, he sees people doing this antifungal diet, and then all of a sudden this inflammation can go down. You lower your toxic burden, and you're not dealing with a fungal overgrowth. So Candida, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit later, but Candida is something that can overgrow, and it's a single cell fungus. It's considered a yeast, but it targets moist mucosis or mucosal lining and membranes like the mouth, which you see here, which is that thrush on your tongue, the gut, my story, and the urinary tract. So think about urinary tract infections. The symptoms of Candida, I mentioned with the fungal piece, but the brain fog, the sugar cravings, the bloating, the localized yeast infections and or fatigue. And the triggers for Candida overgrowth could be the rounds of antibiotics, could be high sugar diets, could be chronic stress, could be, what I did with my SIFO treatment where you kill the bacteria, there's real estate in the gut, and now the yeast get to overgrow because they're like, ooh, there's more room. So there's about 20 to 30 species of yeast that are known to be opportunistic pathogens in humans, and 4 to 6 specific Candida species, which account for about 90 to 95% of all human infections. And so we can test for these with stool, urine, organic acid tests. But yeah, it shows up in the mucosal lining affecting the immune response, and it can be implicated from a cell study from 2024 in cancer, long COVID, and schizophrenia. So it's not benign. A lot of people are like, Candida, who cares? It needs to be fixed. So you can go to your prescribing physician and ask for fluconazole, which is a prescription for yeast. It's an antifungal. It's a medication. Or biocidin is something that I have in my natural protocol. But yeah, you want to take care of it. And I'll just share that this is Dr. Vanjani. I'm not going to go too deep into any of the science, but basically this whole slide is about Crohn's disease and Candida, specifically around these yeasts that cause your immune system to react, damage the epithelial cells of our gut lining, damage the blood-brain barrier, damage the lining of, the blood-brain barrier is another slide, but this one's all dealing with Crohn's. So that's going to be all of our digestive and or the colon. So you can have fungal skin infections. This is a single cell fungus, toenail fungus. You've got Malaysia. So I sent my client this photo because she spent about 4 months in Costa Rica and cited that she had some skin issues. There was an issue with mold on a mattress. And I sent her this photo. She's like, yes, this is exactly my skin. So Malaysia, which lives on the skin topically. It's a yeast, can cause conditions like tinea versicolor, which you're looking at here, and seborrheic dermatitis, which is what I had, and can be colonized and reside in the gut. It also has implications for Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So the thing is that when my client also had H. pylori, had a history of Hashimoto's, so her immune system was already she already had some problems. So this is why mold and or fungus contributes to the immune system, depressing the immune system. And that's why it's one of the roots of all roots, because then the H. pylori infection can come out. Oh, the Hashimoto's, this is why we need to address the fungus and the molds and why it's important for chronic symptoms. For those of you that popped on the call a little bit later, this is my scalp. This is what I had. Also, Malaysia single cell yeast fungus. This is what is called small intestinal fungal overgrowth. So it can be Candida or it can be a single cell yeast. And so it was clogging my ears, and also coming out my scalp for 4 to 5 months. And so, it's not just one thing. So what is causing this fungal infection on the scalp? Diseases of the gastrointestinal tract. I had SIBO, a bacterial overgrowth. Long-term use of anabolic steroids, which I was given a script of corticosteroids. There's changes in hormones. Yeah, I was 43. So I was having issues starting with the perimenopause. I also had pathogenic effects of malaria. So it was coming up out of my, from my gastrointestinal tract out and into my bloodstream and systemically moving up through my blood-brain barrier and out my scalp and out my ears as well. Hypovitaminosis, which is just not being able to absorb the vitamins, having issues with nutrient deficiencies around vitamin A and C, and then increased excitability of the central nervous system. And this is all about getting out of fight or flight. So this is Dr. Vanjani again. He's the frickin' man. Been doing this for 40 years, only studying fungus, fungal overgrowths, molds. And so there's this three-way relationship between the gut microbiome, which is molds, mycotoxins, fungus, the microbiome, our gut, and the immune system. And so that's where the autoimmunity piece comes into play, because this little picture over here on the left with all the reds, that's how it affects all these organ systems. So Candida albicans antibody reacted with the thymus, the liver, the ovary, the pancreas, the spleen, the brain, the kidney, the adrenals. So testing, let's look at that. How do we test for these fungal overgrowths? Well, thankfully, Dr. Vanjani, he's got some crazy stuff. I would actually probably, I know enough to be dangerous, but I would probably refer to someone that's more specialized with, if you're going to take his Cyrex arrays. But these are all the different, if your immune system is being impacted. So that's super interesting from a functional piece. But I run a gut zoomer, which is a stool, and I can also run an organic acids, and this is testing for fungus and candidas. Okay, how are we doing on time? All right, I want to make sure we have time for questions. Okay, I'm going to run through this. So the environmental mold piece, this is where everybody starts to get a little panicky. So if you're parking your car and this is on the top of your garage, where is mold and what to freaking do about it? If there is nothing else that you get from this presentation today, this training, is that fungus, the internal piece, it's an immune issue. It's how your immune system is reacting to mold or fungus. And when we're talking about environmental mold in our homes, mold in our gyms, mold in our schools, mold in anywhere we are at, our offices, mold is a moisture problem. That's all you need to remember. So Jim, who came to the shop when we had the shop in Solana Beach for 7 years, my mom and I, he came, was like, I'm going to get on some SSRIs, or I need some prescription for mental health meds, see a psychiatrist, because I am so depressed and fatigued. And thankfully, he knew, I don't know how, but he knew to test his home. And so he had mold growing in the back. There was a leak and there was mold behind his shower. And then the inspectors found mold behind his dishwasher. And so during our program, he said, I normally could never drive longer than 4 hours without stopping for a nap. And on a recent road trip, I brought a pillow in case and never needed it. I drove for 7 hours without having to stop. I cannot believe the change in my energy levels. I also noticed my brain fog lifting, and I can tell, I can now talk in complete sentences. I'm telling everyone I know about the benefits of detoxing. And so he didn't need to go on his SSRIs, because the reality is, if you address the mold, the root of all roots, and making sure that you're cleaning up the moisture problem, then you can address some of these mood issues if you have a known issue in your home. Kim was the owner of a yoga studio super healthy, had a very healthy lifestyle, was in a condo in Solana Beach. And I remember talking to her, and she would go to her closet and she would have to dust off her boots and her shoes every time she wanted to put something on. And she didn't know what that white kind of dust was. Well, this was environmental mold and it took her down. And so her doctor told her that she had incurable ulcerative colitis and that she would need to have this autoimmune disorder for life. And she no longer has ulcerative colitis. It's gone. She addressed the mold issue. Another mold and mental health. This is Monique with ochratoxin A levels at a 14.98. And after our program, a 0.53. Dr. Neil Nathan, who's very big in this space, had ochratoxin A levels at a 2.17 and considered himself mold toxic. So I've seen upwards to, in the 14, 15, 19 in ochratoxin A. So is it a food-derived mold? Yes, you need to lower the food-derived molds. And it also could be environmental. She reported having mold in her prior home in Solana Beach. So her neurotransmitters were all over the freaking place. And this is after our program, and see how all the neurotransmitters are in green. So why is fungus so overlooked? 47% of homes have a moisture or mold problems. Indoor air is more polluted than outside air. We breathe up to 30 pounds of air a day, mostly indoors, and you can't fast or supplement your way out of toxic air, which is why we need to deal with the mold. So I have to run through these, but like real quick, but this is how mold harms. These particular mycotoxins from our environment can be neurotoxic, create oxidative stress, immunotoxic, be carcinogenic, and nephrotoxic. And see how ochratoxin A is here, 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 here. And it's because this is the blood-brain barrier one. This is Dr. Vajani's work again. But this whole idea is that, see how these yeasts that I'm talking about, molds and mycotoxins, have the ability to cross this blood-brain barrier, and then boom, okay, our immune system, and so our microglia in our brain, which are immune cells in our brain, react, and that this is also impacting the neurons, the myelin sheath on our nerves. So yeah, I'm going to skip that piece. But the biggest thing, around biofilms is that mold wants to protect itself. And so that's why they can get stuck in our sinuses. So this Got Mold handout is so great if you want to check for mold in your home. And the testing is very economical. And I will share on my YouTube channel what I did for my testing for my home and the results and everything about it. And then for testing for mold for the body, which again, there's some confusion and or what do I want to say? People are not all on they're not on the same page around the urine testing, but I want to share this one real quick. Is that a dad and daughter in Orange County tested they had environmental mold, they had it in the daughter's bedroom, they got remediation on it. And so they did some mold testing after they knew they had mold in their home. And look, they have almost the exact same numbers for both of these. So two different bodies, similar responses, almost to the exact number of these environmental molds. So, which is why, I don't want to totally knock urine testing. So I'm just going to let anybody that comes to me for wanting to do testing to choose. It's like, do you want the MycoTox? Do you want to use the total tox burden? Do you want to test your genes? Do you want to test for antibodies with serum labs with blood? So the idea is just to keep moving forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my link in here that I have some very cool simple one-pager air, food, water, lifestyle tips. And the idea is to go ahead and book a call for more information. And I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to take questions. I did not even give us 20 minutes, but I will make sure to stay after if there's more questions after 12:30. So, Regan, if you're still there, if you found your MycoTox, oh, okay. Diane, thank you. I'm going to copy the link to the quiz and to the article. So that's the link to the quiz. And I'll make sure I will add the air, food, water tips. There we go. Okay. You're so welcome. Okay. Regan's back in. Okay, cool. My pleasure, Diane. So Diane, have you had mold or do you know anything about, your mold levels or fungus? You guys can come off mute now. Oh, hey, there she is. Did you find your MycoTox?
Yeah, I actually texted it to you. I don't know if you got a
Oh,
text.
sweet. Let's look at
Um,
this baby.
I don't know. You said you were talking about okra toxin A being like a 14. Mine says 34, but I don't know if that's a different test. Like, since it's urine, we might be talking different
Right.
numbers.
Yeah, because I haven't tested with the okra or with the MycoTox specifically. But another functional doc just sent me her MycoTox and she had a 19 on her okra toxin.
Okay.
And so yeah, it's the thing is that this one's tricky because it's food derived. So it
Oh,
could be a snapshot in time where you just took on, like you had some corn or had some, level of ochratoxin in your food,
yeah.
right? However, it also could be where it's a mix of environmental as well.
Yeah, because that's not the only one I have.
Right.
Here, I'll look at it with you if you're
Yeah.
able to open it. It was just a snapshot of the top three ones that I have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that the one that with the OTA, I mean, you saw that slide where it just is like it's implicated in all these systems.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, because it's sitting there in the red, it's going to be elevated for sure. So I wonder, yeah, the gliotoxin, and that's going to be more brain. And then the mycophyllinic acid, that one, Dr. Jill Carnahan, who she's a functional specialist, but her book, Unexpected, she talks about a lot around this mycophenolic acid, the MPA. So yeah, see, that's so funny. I'm using the exact same handout of what this mycotox has, where it's just affecting so many systems. Alpha toxin, looks like nothing. Yeah, it was really your ochratoxin. And see how funny that verniculin A, that was from my clients with the mold exposure, and those were super elevated.
Hmm.
So that's definitely environmental. So yeah, I think for you, I would want to do some more research around that mycophenolic acid to see if it's more environmental. Because if all three of the ochratoxin, the gliotoxin, and the mycophenolic acid are more food derived, then it would just be great to just start with that antifungal diet by Dr.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
but then the idea would be, you're still in a new place, right?
Year and a half.
Year and a half.
But I did just have a mold, like an environmental toxin company come out and test last week. So I should have results within like a week or two.
Okay, see, and then that way you can look at your the mold test that you have and compare it to the one that they give you, and that's where you can really find some answers.
Sure. I mean, I don't think this current place, I mean, there's no telling there's mold, but I don't think it was my big problem since I've been having symptoms for 2.5 years.
Right.
And since my mom also has mold, I'm so curious as to whether this has been a thing since, we lived together 25 years ago.
Totally. And I think, the guy from Got Mold, I interviewed him, blanking on his name right now, Jason Earl. He's super bright, but he's like, people come to me all the time. They're like, I have mold in my body. I have mold in my body. He's like, probably not. He's like, just handle moisture problem in the home. However, he's not a clinician, right?
Hmm.
And he works mainly with researchers. And so I'm also hear from people that are working with patients that it's if you handle the environmental mold, then they typically have to deal with the fungal overgrowth later. And so that's where like the
Oh,
conversation
okay. I guess
is.
I never differentiated between mold and fungal overgrowth in your body. Like I thought that was the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So like the mycotoxins are chemicals, but they're not going to be necessarily colonized
Mm.
body, but if you have, so that's where you need to inhale them with the spores.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be in the environment, but it throws off the whole terrain. And then now you're
Sure.
dealing with the fungal overgrowth in the body. Is that helpful at all? That's what
Yeah.
I concluded, I'm like, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. And you mentioned Got Mold. Is that a book or a
Okay, so
documentary or a?
Got Mold, I have an interview on my YouTube with him. It's a testing, so
Oh, okay,
very
okay.
economical little test, and I'm gonna put on there too, like how I tested for my home. But you have a control that you take outside, and then you can use these little things that you can do for your room. So I did my bathroom and I did my bedroom.
Mm-hmm. Like little petri dish type things.
They're not Petri, and that's the big thing because like Petri supposedly is unhelpful, but these are where they're pods that you put into this machine and you take it and it gets sent to a lab.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's on my site. But you already had an inspector come out, so you're already on it. I'm seeing some notes in the chat with Diane saying I tested for high ochratoxin and citrin at 30. Yeah, so Great Plains mycotoxin test. Diagnosed with Parkinson's, I believe it's mold, heavy metals, also tested with high, and she hasn't finished that. So absolutely, Diane, if you ever want to get on a call, I'll put the link to my booking link because I happily will talk fungus and bacteria overgrowth all day long. Okay, so any questions? Thank you, Regan, so much for letting us dive into your MycoTox test. That's so rad.
Mm.
And then you're going to have to let me know how it goes with the results of your inspection.
Yeah, I will for sure.
Yes. Terry, Diane, any other questions before I end this call? I'm all yours.
I have a question. I don't, and you're welcome to say you don't know. So you mentioned some other autoimmune diseases that either mold has helped bring in, or mold is kind of like, I don't know, like they will go away or get better if you deal with your mold. Do you have any idea on my myasthenia gravis if, because I have the big belief that if I take care of my mold, then it will have to get better, but maybe it doesn't have the same links.
So anything, yeah, I don't know much about your particular autoimmune disorder because it's genetics, environment, and gut. Those are the
Mm.
three pillars of any autoimmunity. So if you're going to address the environmental and the gut piece, you're going to allow for, even if there are a genetic component to where you're not having flares or reducing the amount of symptoms from autoimmunity, because the reality is like we're lowering that toxic burden. So when I
Mm-hmm.
think about my Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it's like those antibodies they're not firing. So then we're just lowering that immune reaction by reducing that load. So I'll look up your specific case, Fib, but I think that's just how, in general, functional medicine looks at autoimmunity,
Mm-hmm.
are those three pillars. So Diane, did you have a question?
I used to leave my rice out overnight, or grains a lot of times in a pot out overnight. So my
Yeah.
functional doctor did suggest that could have been part of the problem. But I also took my apartment with like a Home Depot quick test. Well, it wasn't quick. I just some sort of tape that I put in the bathroom area. And then in the basement, the basement test is very high for aspergillus and penicillium,
Yep.
which the two mycotoxins both are related to. So there was that. And then I found a blue-green colored something growing on some clothes in some closet. I've had leaking from the apartment above into the areas where I'm covering mold growing at. And I also had flooding. So I basically moved out of my bedroom
Yeah.
into the front room, but I have to move actually. They're going to be falling the house out.
Yep.
So
You're in it.
yeah,
You're doing all the things though. So, and this is the part that, it's scary to people, but the idea is that, you just do one step at a time, do what you can at your capacity. And you've tested, you have environmental molds. Now it's going to be where maybe once you're out of the home or out of the bedroom, this is where you can get it taken care of because it's a moisture problem.
right. I'm also right now taking of thyme. A functional naturopathic doctor recommended the thyme and also the liver detox formula by Herb Farm.
Yeah,
Taking
so
those.
yeah, antimicrobials, great. Yeah, and see, and you're contracted with a provider that's going to be helping you, support you with this, the journey to support you so that your Parkinson's symptoms, ideally can be mitigated or supported with getting rid of this environment piece.
Right, right. But it's so overwhelming.
I know, I know. I appreciate, that you're doing all the things though, Diane, and same with you, Regan. It's like just one step at a time. So it might be interesting, Diane, just to explore today, the food-derived molds, from Doug Kopp.
I stopped leaving things out on the stove overnight.
Perfect. See? So his diet, is the antifungal diet, just adding that piece, just seeing where you can let your immune system take a break.
Yeah, very rarely eat corn, and I don't drink coffee, and
Oh,
I'm free, so I blame those things. I'm struggling with the EDTA that was also recommended to me. I'm afraid to actually, honestly, the naturopath taking it. I'm struggling with when to take it because I'm going to bind all the minerals in my album. I don't know if you have any experience with that.
so the EDTA.
Right, for heavy metals.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, you're going to be on your own protocol that they're recommending. So, I'm familiar with just making sure that, you go in order. And so usually mold goes before heavy metals. So I would just, work with your provider, but really just handle what needs to be handled first. Order operations, Diane, so you don't get overwhelmed. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, I think the heavy metal pretty high too. I don't know why. It's very surprising.
Yeah, but it's so funny how it's like when that immunosuppressant of mold and mycotoxins, and then all of a sudden, oh, parasites, heavy metals, all
Hey,
these
I got
chronic
those too.
infections start showing up, and so that's why it's the root of all roots,
Which one?
molds.
Mold? Oh, I do have my strategy. Of course, somewhere I can't find the sheet that I have my snips there. I wouldn't be, I do have one MTHFR snip.
Yeah, so you're already struggling.
Yeah,
That's good. I'm like, you're very knowledgeable. I have a very knowledgeable crew here.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate you being on the call and just contributing to our discussion today. It's just helpful to know it's possible and to get support. And Terry, do you have any questions today? Was there anything that new that came? Any feedback for me? You're such a good learner.
She has a rash I'd love her to ask you about.
A rash? Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Skin issues.
I don't know if she's gonna hop on, but it's on her face.
Mm.
Tara, do you know how to unmute yourself?
Maybe.
Okay.
There she is.
Yes, it seems like it just came on all of a sudden right after we moved here. We've lived here since February 19th, and first I thought it was the hard water because I'd been used to soft water.
Yeah.
And I still have it. I finally got in with a dermatologist, and she called it perioral dermatitis and gave me an antibiotic and an antibiotic cream, which I'm supposed to be on for 6 weeks. And it is better, but it's not completely gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if she's up for it, the dermatologist, they can always culture. There's a test that they can test and see if it's fungal.
Well, she wouldn't suspect that by just looking, thinking this might be fungal.
Well, what's so funny is I'm learning from Doug Kaufman, it's like you kind of have to advocate because
Oh, no kidding.
well, but just in general with this fungus piece, like that sinusitis study, there's doctors out there still today that are giving chronic sinusitis, they're getting antibiotics to people. This landmark study was like 93% of it is fungal.
What does sinusitis entail? I mean, I have had a drippy nose for as long as I remember. I mean, that's all it is. It's just like water. It doesn't have any viscosity or color. It's just clear water that's always there at the end of my nose.
Well, the sinusitis is like where, my mom had it for years, but it's like the pain
Okay, and yeah, a
And so it's
congestion.
in the congestion and
Yeah, okay.
perhaps headache, and so it's miserable. But yeah, it would be interesting to see what she says about the if she's willing to test to see if it's fungal. To
Mm-hmm.
the other thing would just be to try out the 45 days of the antifungal diet from Dr.
Yeah.
Hoffman
Yeah.
and just see if that rash or any of, I mean, it's hard because now you're on an antibiotic,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but it's
Well, I struggled with that decision. I wasn't going to take it, and then I just got so tired of looking so ugly.
listen, I did not want my ears to burst when I got on that plane. And
Mm-hmm.
so you better believe I took an antibiotic and
Mm-hmm.
come to find out it's just a bunch of mold and I was
Yeah.
just adding to my mold.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is, like confirmed bacterial, then the antibiotic should work and
Okay.
you should have some relief, But if for some reason after 6 weeks you go back to your dermatologist and you're like, hey, it's still here. Can you test and see if it could be fungal?
And if it turns out it was fungal, the antibiotic was just making it worse all along.
Correct.
Okay, well, it's not worse since I started.
Great. We like that. We like that. That's much
Yeah.
fun. So I think symptoms, you gotta, give a protocol a full go and
Yeah.
assess with a partner on what to do next. It's just an idea. And you could just be even at the same time with antifungal, you could absolutely be doing this while on your antibiotic.
Sure.
Yeah, so I totally appreciate you being experimental. Thank you for being so open to the conversation. I just find this bacterial and fungal kind of balance to be a very interesting, and toxins and autoimmunity. All this is super interesting to me, as we kind of this emerging field is coming out. So thank you for being such good, listeners and participants in my work. I appreciate you so much, Terry and Regan.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Woo!
you.
Thank you, Diane, for being here today. And so I will make sure that a recording goes out and I will make sure that we are chaptering some of the topics today. And is there anything that you want me to come to you with next for a topic, Regan, Terry, Diane?
I can't think of anything at the moment, but thank you. I will look for the recording, so that's the
Good.
first question. Yeah,
Great.
pretty interesting and good information.
Thank you
Good.
so much, Diane.
I will check out the link.
Please do. Regan or Terry, is there anything you want me to come research or you're curious to learn more about? Is it autoimmunity? Is it more the environmental piece?
If I think of something, I will text you for sure.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Mwah. Have a wonderful day, lovely ladies.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.